Hi, my name is Temni Wright, and this is an episode of Lawyering Behind the Scenes. Today we're going to talk about celebrity estates. Whatever happens, it's usually a mess. There's rarely a celebrity estate that goes well, whether they're fighting over money or they're fighting over control. Celebrity estates leave lots of drama. Some families can be fighting about estates 30 years later, like Bob Marley's family, and some people can get the estates wrapped up fairly quickly. Usually this happens when things are non-controversial, but they tend to be when it comes to celebrities and the large estates that they have. So today we're going to talk about Aretha Franklin, Queen of Soul, and Kasem. Aretha Franklin passed away from pancreatic cancer in 2018. And now, as the timing of this video, we're in August, or September actually, 2020, and her estate still hasn't been settled. She reportedly has a $17 million estate, but the controversy is that at the time of her death, they thought there was no will. So they thought her four sons, as heirs to her estate, just by law, they thought that they would divide it equally in accordance with Michigan law and where she passed away. After her death, I guess when they started to look through her home estate, not to be confused with the other estate, they found out that she had 3 handwritten wills. So handwritten wills are a bit of a mess. If you're going to handwrite your will, you need to be sure that you conform to the other requirements that are applicable in your state to make that will a binding document. So if you handwrite a will, there's no one there to witness it, we don't know when it was drafted, like you didn't put a date or anything on there, it's going to cause a really big dispute at the time of your death, because then that is something that has to be decided by the court to see when it was executed, who has control, what it will mean, and how the estate would be divided. And then there's also other issues that come into play with estates in terms of what if a person has a will and if it's handwritten and it's not by a lawyer, there are often concerns, and even when it is by a lawyer, there are often concerns with the person's capacity. So if they were not competent enough to enter into a will, like just has to be competent enough to enter into a contract. In Aretha Franklin's case, she has 4 sons. The 4 sons, when she initially died, they're like, okay, we're going to divide it equally in accordance with Michigan law. Then they subsequently found out that there were 3 other wills, and one was hidden underneath a couch cushion. So who knows what her actual intent was and who she wanted to control the estate. At the time of her death, since they thought there was no will, they appointed her niece as the executor of the estate. Sabrina took it over, started, working things out, trying to figure out what was going on. And then they found these other wills. And now there's a serious question on who should control the assets of the estate. Now this becomes particularly important with celebrity estates because their estate and their assets continue after their death. So all the copyrighted music that they've owned, all the movies that they've been in, all the rights to their likeness, to their image, to the way that they made money during their life will come into play at the time of their death. So in the case of Aretha Franklin, they are fighting over who's going to control not only that 17 million, but who is going to be responsible for making the decisions of how Aretha Franklin's likeness and image is used in her death, how her music is used in her death, and all of that. All the other types of law, whether an attorney is practicing criminal law, civil litigation, or estates, it does intersect with entertainment law, because after a celebrity's death, who has the rights to use their image? Who has the rights to their life story? Who is gonna be responsible for their music? So especially this becomes really a big issue in the entertainment industry, or in the music industry, excuse me. This becomes especially a big issue in the music industry because they have this whole portfolio of work that can be sampled, that can be used in movies and television, that can be used to hologram concert after their death. So there's so many ways that an artist's life and legacy can be portrayed, and they need someone responsible who's gonna control that. That's really what the basis of this fight is coming down to for Aretha Franklin's sons. They want to know who is going to have control over the decision-making process, who's going to have control over the $17 million, but who's also going to have control over the decisions that are made regarding the estate. The time that when they found the 3 wills, Sabrina Owens, I keep wanting to call her Candace Owens, and I won't do that to her. Sabrina Owens, she was the executor of the estate. Then they found the 3 wills, and it brought into question, was it Aretha's intention for her to become executor of the estate? Sabrina ended up just being like, this is not worth the drama for me, and they ended up appointing an attorney to be executor of the estate, and that's really the last we've heard about this. So it's been 2 years since her passing, and the estate continues to battle over who's gonna have control of the decision making and who's gonna have control over the money. So I'm sitting tight, I'm staying tuned for that, because they're fighting over some petty stuff that I didn't even get into, like who's gonna drive her BMW, who's gonna drive her Benz, like stuff like that, which is, you know, really sad. The lesson learned from that one is just be really careful when you're doing handwritten wills. Look up the parameters of your state and how a handwritten will be valid in your state, because if you have all these wills lying around and you think, oh good, I'm covered, cool, you might not have covered your family. So it's just something to think about. So next we're gonna move on to a really interesting story, Kasem. If you don't know Kasem, he was a co-founder of the Top 40. So this is another music related, but he wasn't an artist. He was a disc jockey. So he created the Top 40. He was the voice of Scooby-Doo, which I totally didn't realize. I think I knew at some point, but I didn't realize until I started, I heard this story and I started doing more research on it. So I heard this story on Dateline, or one of those crime shows that I listen to obsessively that I don't even know which one it is at this point. I want to say it was Dateline told this really, I think they had on Dateline and 48 Hours. So this really interesting story of Kasem at the end of his life, when he fell ill, the dispute that his family went through over his estate and who would make health decisions for him, and who would have control of the estate after his death, who would make all those decisions that we just discussed in Aretha Franklin's case. He was previously married before he married his wife, who was his wife at the time of his death. Him and that wife had been together for 30 years by the time he was towards the end of his life. So his children were from a previous marriage, and there was some obvious discord despite the length of the marriage. There was clearly some tension, some disputes, some ill will prior to Casey falling ill. So Kasem got diagnosed with a Parkinson's type disease. So not exactly Parkinson's, but something that had similar symptoms and had, impacted his mental capacity. So at that time, his children are like, oh gosh, he's getting sick. Like, let's make sure that we have rights in, making sure he's well taken care of, because their story is the wife had been alienating him from his family this whole time. And then when he got sick, the alienation kind of takes it a step further, because he doesn't have a way to kind of like stand up for himself or put his input. So that's when it really got out of hand. He got sick, and according to the wife, she says that the children took him to a UPS store when he had some kind of brain, I think it was really cosmetic based, but he had a cut in his scalp. So you'll see like his head was bandaged. But according to them, it was more like a cosmetic thing. According to her, he was dizzy, he wasn't feeling well. So they took him to this UPS store in order to execute health directive documents. Those of you who haven't been in that position before, a health directive is really putting instructions in place for how you want things to go when you're unable to make health decisions for yourself. So later in life, that would usually be like a Kasem's kids took him to a UPS store, hella random, like you think it would be done in like an attorney's office, I don't know, like a kitchen, I don't know, just odd place to do it, as a celebrity especially. So I think that didn't look great on their end. So they took him to the store, his head's bandaged, and he's like signing papers. They say he's completely coherent, he got it, he knew why he was there, he knew the purpose. He wanted to give his children the right to take control of his health decisions if he became incapacitated. The children say that the wife is withholding him from them, so they weren't allowed to see him, and so they didn't really know the state of his health. So that continues. She puts him in a nursing home, which obviously against their wishes, and it's a long battle towards the end of his life. It gets so bad that she becomes fearful that the children will take him or do something, so she he's in a care facility and she takes him in the middle of the night and like transports him to a different state. Eventually. So she transports him to a different facility. The children are still battling. She transports him to a different state, has him staying at her random friend's house, has removed his feeding tubes and everything. And according to the kids, he's becoming gravely ill. So there's a court battle that ensues over, is it elder abuse issue? Who has the right to make the decisions? Children do get the right to transport him to a hospital from this random lady's house. Like, it's the wife's friend, but to me, it's super random. There's a fight that ensues in front of the house. There's a bunch of media there. The wife hits the daughter throws raw meat at the daughter. It's a bizarre story. It really is a bizarre story. And just, I think, beyond the lawyering that obviously is going behind this, because they have to, this dispute is in court. So it's no longer just like if he dies or, who's going to take care of it? It's in courts, it's being disputed. Besides that impact that the lawyers are doing behind the scenes and trying to get everything settled, this is really sad state for Kasem at the end of his life, that I'm sure, like, regardless of what his state of mind was, dementia, Parkinson's, disease or anything of that nature, he had to feel the tension and the animosity between the people that he loved. So this story is, it's settled now, they're fine, he's buried in some foreign country, but really the main part of the dispute went on during his life. And that's really tragic. Take care of your business in life. Like, go to a lawyer's office, get the documents executed. There is no guarantee, and I do want to preface it with this for estates in particular, there is no guarantee that just because you took it to an attorney's office and you went through the right process that there will be no dispute upon the person's death, because you see with these celebrities' estates, children come out of the woodwork after death, and just all these different things can impact what you did. But just put yourself and your family in the best position by doing estate planning. So something to think about. I hope you found this episode not fun, because to me it was super sad and depressing, and I'm still upset about Kasem. Just saying. So I hope you found this episode educational and interesting more than you found it fun. But if you found it fun too, learning is fun. Anyway, I'm Tiffany Wright. That was a little episode of Lawyering Behind the Scenes, and I'll catch you next time.